Let's talk a little Browns, guys, but a quick reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build, in practicing every detail to get the best results, but no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. At Epicor, the all-stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor's ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain now easier. Managing logistics also easier. Responding to price changes, that's also easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global vision, we'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way, because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most out of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at www.easierwithepicor.com. That is www.easierwithepicor.com. All right, guys, Mary Kay put out a report yesterday, and I'm just going to read you the headline as it is. Steve, please take...
You can also listen to it because she was a guest on my podcast.
She was a guest on your podcast. Steve, take tag board full here. According to Mary Kay's Twitter, breaking... Browns and Carson Wentz definitely have mutual interest in him as their bridge QB if they don't sign Russell Wilson. Source tells Cleveland.com. Go.
Yeah, I've fully come over to the Jason Lloyd side of things on this.
Come on in.
I kind of said it in the beginning, and then I started being like, maybe we'll get Russell Wilson. Maybe he's better. And at this point, I'm like, I just don't care.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No.
It's irrelevant what veteran you add to the mix, because they're going to draft a quarterback. They're probably going to draft a quarterback at 2. Even if they don't, I think they'll draft a quarterback at 33. And there's no veteran quarterback that is going to make them a legitimate contender. None. So whether you sign Carson Wentz or Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston, not that they're signing Jameis again, or even Aaron Rodgers, not that he's on their radar, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. In fact, it might be, I hate to say this because Tyvus made this point, and he's right about culture and learning to win and not, the Browns are probably better off losing in the long run this year.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not like, the overall culture of this place obviously has been horrific for 25 years. Mm-hmm. But they were a playoff team just a couple of years ago, so it's not like they've been tanking for 5 years. We act like they've been tanking for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they haven't. They had a bad year last year. The Deshaun thing was a miss, and it wrecked the contention window. That's just the reality of where they are.
Yeah.
So now you have to, sweep up the pieces and start over again.
It's all Anthony Schwartz's fault, dude.
Well, there is something to be said for that, because he stopped on the route.
He did, and Baker's shoulder gets broken.
Yeah.
And then he plays through it, obviously. And there was a big disconnect with the injury and the performance on the field. And because of that, he wanted out of Cleveland because the way he was treated. Not to go, relitigate the situation.
No.
But, dude, the Baker – because they were in the playoffs. They won playoff games.
I would still argue in the long term they were never going to win with him, but that's another argument for another
But
day.
I did have someone fairly high up at the Browns say this all goes back to Baker getting hurt.
Yeah.
And this was a long time ago I had that discussion.
Right.
Imagine if Baker didn't get hurt.
And he contributed to his way out of here.
He absolutely did.
100%.
Yes.
I'm not giving him a pass at all. And I'm not necessarily saying that it for sure would have worked out, but they were trending in the right direction. They had a quarterback that was a really good player. And then they decided that, we can just replace that guy. Right. And they tried the cheat code, and the cheat code didn't work.
It didn't work.
No.
And so you just have to be honest with where you're at. It's not a 10-year rebuild that we're talking about here. It's 1 year. It's a 1 year reset. Coming off last year's really bad year, you go into this year knowing you're not going to be pretty great, and you deal with it. You get through the season. You capitalize on high picks, and then you can start to put the thing together and go. It's not this long-term, terrible plan.
So, Jason, if that's your plan, 1 year kind of rebuild, are you in on Carson Wentz then being part of the Browns quarterback room?
I don't. I said it the other day. Do you want the car with no transmission, or do you want the car with no tires? Or do you want the car with no brakes? Because that's where we're at. And it doesn't really matter. I don't care who they sign. I'm fine. Given all the names that I've heard so far, just put Kenny Pickett out there. He's 26 on a rookie contract.
Cool. I'm cool with that. Carson Wentz, cool with that. Flacco, cool with that. all those dudes are professional quarterbacks, unlike everything we've had last year.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything professional about last year. A couple of moments from Jameis Winston, sure. But overall, like, you're just not getting the professionalism from the quarterback position. Not just, I mean, I'm not saying like off the field or how he behaves. It's like you got to have a professional offense that can run play action, that can run whatever Stefanski wants to deploy at a pretty high clip. Or at least above average or around average. Everything that they had last year was below average for the most part.
Well, at least now they have a play caller who can run the ball.
Yeah.
At the very least.
They don't have a running back, but they
don't have a
They'll
running back.
have a running back
Yeah,
in
but they
2
will.
seconds, man. You know that.
Yeah, so the Browns are in a catch-22 because we know it's better for the franchise for them to lose. Honestly, even if they draft Shedeur Sanders, they're better off losing and getting a higher draft pick next year to increase the talent around him. However, you have a coach and GM that if they lose too much, could both get fired.
Yeah.
It's a whole difficult balance because it's you do want to win because those players need
Right,
to.
nobody wants to lose.
Like, you need to win.
Yeah.
Losing just continually creates bad culture, bad behavior, bad tendencies, like all those things that are negative
true.
with an organization.
Yes.
It comes from losing. And even if you're like, oh, we're going to be at the bottom of the draft again, like, what's the point in winning? We can say that as fans, but like internally, they do need to win games at least periodically.
Yeah.
So to give themselves a chance, like, so this whole like 3-13, 3-14 or whatever, like, they can't do that again, man. They can't.
No, everybody's going to get fired if that happens, even though it might be better for the long-term franchise. But yes, you have to balance, okay, we get a higher pick. The problem is, good teams, it doesn't matter if they're drafting 10, 15, 25, they'll find good players, or more often find good players, and the Browns haven't done that.
Yeah.
And part of the biggest reason they're in this predicament is that Deshaun Watson was a disaster. But another reason that things are as bad as they are is that they've done a bad job drafting, and they have very little young talent.
Yeah. You know, it's two conversations. If you take a quarterback at 2 this year, my whole thing has always been, you're going to be bad this year, accept it, embrace it, go get the quarterback in 26. No, we don't know what the names are going to be, but it certainly looks like it's shaping up at this point to be a better quarterback draft next year than this year. Is there a risk involved in that? 100%. All of this is risk. It's just how much risk are you comfortable taking? If you take a quarterback at 2, though, yeah, like, you're trying to win next year, because there's not as much incentive, I guess, to not be good, because if you think you've got your long-term guy. I just think you have to be honest and realistic about the position that you're in. And this team is not close to being a top-end Super Bowl contender. You can scrape into the playoffs. You can limp your way in as a 7th seed. You can be in the battle and contention, into November and December. You could probably piece this thing together back enough to be in that conversation. I just don't know how that's advancing this forward, because they're not ready to contend on the highest level. And that's why I just think you're wasting your time and you're fooling yourself if you think differently. So it's two different conversations.
Yeah,
quarterback. There's the quarterback but if you take the quarterback now, if you take the quarterback at 2 now, it lessens the need to embrace a whole tank next year, because it's the most important spot. And if you take a quarterback at 2, you have to feel like, okay, we feel like we've addressed that, whether you have or not.
Well, if they feel like Shedeur Sanders is that answer, it's not as punitive drafting quarterback either. So if you drafted Shedeur Sanders and after a year you decided, well, we screwed up, you could, you could always draft somebody again next year.
Are we assuming that is Cam Ward done? Is he out?
I mean, I'm just assuming he's getting drafted 1. But we certainly don't know that for sure.
Right.
Justin,
Draft is 5 weeks from today, right?
It is 5 weeks from today. The FanDuel Sportsbook odds for Cam Ward to be the number 1 pick, not by which team, but just the number 1 pick, it's up to -450.
Yeah, but I think odds on the draft are it's
I'm just
not
saying,
based on
it looks
facts.
like he's the prohibitive favorite now, regardless of team, to be the number 1 pick.
Right, but it's not. It's based on rumor and innuendo, not the book having any inside information.
You sure? Vegas seems to know everything.
They get it wrong with draft
and they
picks.
also don't let you bet. You can't bet $1 million on that.
No.
I mean,
in
they
a lot of
cap
states,
it.
in Ohio, you can't even bet on the draft.
They cap those. You can't bet on the
No,
draft?
not legally.
Oh.
You can't bet on the draft, but in some states you can. I know in like Louisiana you can. But
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean it's. And by the way, like if you decide to wait for next year in the end, if they don't think Shedeur Sanders or any of these other guys besides Cam Ward are any good, you don't draft them. Fine, I get it. But the thing about waiting for next year is, even if they win 6 games next year, that might not be bad enough for them to get a quarterback in the draft. this year may be an anomaly where maybe there's only one good quarterback or none.
Yeah.
Last year was also an anomaly that there were that many good quarterbacks.
But I mean, at the very least, next year, if you let's say 6, if you win 6, you can go up, you can move up. But it's gonna. I mean, you're back in the Deshaun situation where it's going to cost you future draft capital. But you're attaching future ones.
You can go up in theory, but what if there's 3 teams ahead of you that also need a quarterback? They're not trading down.
No, but how many times normally?
Yes.
In any year, teams that are aggressive and want a quarterback find a way to move up and get that quarterback. Almost always, especially from 6. We're not talking 15.
Right,
We're talking
but
6.
If there's a quarterback that everybody looks at as like this guy's a generational
of course,
guy,
you may not get to that guy.
Yes,
but if there's 3 available, generally, if you're in the top 10, you're going to be able to get. But it's going to cost you.
Yes,
it's going to cost you future draft which again goes back to the Miles situation I was talking about. Trade them for future picks, so now you have the capital to move up if you need to.
Which
but
they now don't.
Now it's going to be another. We're attaching future ones in order to move up.
Right. Now, if they draft Shador, maybe that never happens. Maybe he ends up being a good player, and
that solves a lot.
We'll see. But in terms of Carson Wentz specifically, I don't really. The only reason I don't like my beef with Carson Wentz is if he just feels like such a broken guy, kind of like Deshaun. Like confidence gone. Maybe it's come back after a year sitting on the bench in Kansas City. But the last few times we've seen him, he's just looked so shot.
He didn't play poorly in Indianapolis. Like, he wasn't terrible that year as a starter.
But he really choked down the stretch of the season.
But I'm just telling you, they couldn't wait to get rid of him. Like, they couldn't wait to get him out of the building.
Yes.
So it doesn't all add up. And I don't pretend to know everything that happened in Indy. But if you look at the numbers and you go back and watch them.
Holy crap. He threw 27 touchdowns, 7 picks that year.
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, but go look at his game log the last couple of games.
No, I remember he was terrible down the stretch. Yeah, no, I'm just saying
he didn't have a bad year. Overall, he did not have a bad year with Indy. And did they make the playoffs? Or they were in contention?
No, they choked at the end.
He couldn't beat Jacksonville in that last game of the season.
Yeah,
that's right.
But they couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And
same could be said about Russell Wilson the last 2 years.
Yeah, same could be said about Russ. So I don't know. It doesn't all add up with – because, I mean, the last time we saw him in a starter's role, he wasn't awful. But the team was done with him. So.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I have no interest in Carson Wentz. I'm just going to throw it out
there. We know that.
No interest.
None. Zero.
I teased that you were excited about him, but that
I thought you did say that. Yeah,
I did, but I was a lie.
He was. I have no interest in Carson.
I loved, as Dustin knows, Carson Wentz coming out of college.
We both did.
That's true. We both loved him.
I remember we were sitting at the Clevelander.
Yeah.
And Bull and I were doing a show. I think was it Cavs playoffs? Because it was Cavs playoffs because the Browns traded the pick with Philly.
Yeah.
And you and I we liked the move at the time.
Yeah.
And then it obviously he went to Philly and played really well.
Yep. Right.
The first couple of years.
Second team All Pro his second year in the league.
Yeah, I mean he essentially led them to a Super Bowl, not in the playoffs, but the regular season run.
He was having an MVP season.
And then Foles just kind of okay, thanks a lot, man. And then here's the keys.
It was like Foles just picked up his MVP playing during that postseason.
And he played out of his mind against the Patriots for one freaking game.
Yep.
And that Philly special was the deal.
That whole postseason he played great.
Oh, he did.
But that game in particular, he was just that was just insane.
Big Dick Nick.